Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Alexa Mo podcast. Before we begin, I want to give two shout outs. One to Jimmy McKay at PT Pinecast for 8 years as one of the greatest PT podcast hosts, with a smooth, sexy voice made for radio. And also, happy birthday to the president of Karut Staffing Agency, one of my sisters, Anisha Caruth Walker. So, if you have failed to do so, and Alex is having a birthday this week, so happy birthday in advance, Alex.
Thank you, thank you.
I hope you will be enjoying it somewhere, probably at Disney, right?
No, we're gonna be here, kind of laying low.
Okay.
We're going to Disney next month. The boys, they started private school this year, and next month they get like a Wednesday through the rest of the week off. There's like a conference that the school participates in, but we took it off, and we'll go to Disney and hang out, and yeah, just kind of chill there. But looking forward to that.
That's great. That's great. I hope you enjoy it. I wonder why we didn't get like teachers conference and all this stuff when we went to school. It seems like we were in school like every single day.
Man, honestly, it seems like even when they were in public school, that the amount of actual school that they go to seems a lot less than when we went to school. There's like a day off for everything. There's a teacher planning day. There's just you're off because you're off day, and
Yeah, it's
half
like
days and all of
everything.
this. So, but no, ever since they've started private school, it's much more kind of routine, which is good for the kids, and obviously my wife, who does the picking up and dropping off and all that good stuff. So
Okay. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Nick, glad to have you back.
Glad to be back. I was looking forward to this. It's been too long,
yeah,
I
I
was
think
like, we need to get him back before he gets to like superstar status. I mean,
yeah.
Your Twitter
Nick-
profile is like
Nick's
rising.
climbing the ranks here.
Never. No, I'm just.
So Nick is the first official two-time guest.
Yes, cheers.
I love it.
Two-time guest.
That's a badge. That's the pinnacle of my career so far. I wear that badge with honor. So
Yeah, I think we're just gonna make this a yearly occurrence, and we'll
Yeah.
always have an episode with
that sounds. I love it. I love it. Like it's an annual thing.
Yeah.
Actually, my wife and I were talking on our way back from vacation about like, all right, the kids are almost to that age where they're going to be like, we're going to have to do our Disney trip. So like, that week when we go down, we'll set up like a live thing. We get to get something like that while we're in your area down there. You got to come to Florida, I guess.
For real, aside from the fact that I can give you some good tips and info on how to do it right, as cheap as possible. It would definitely.
I will appreciate that because I've seen the prices of Disney, and
it will definitely be an honor to kind of link up in person and do something. So yeah, we'll definitely have to plan that as you guys get ready.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second. My dog just decided that he was going to come and annoy me, and I'm going to let him out before he barks at me. It'll take me 3 seconds. I'm sorry.
No worries.
That's no problem. This is like a BBC special. They always have some sort of interruption.
Oh yeah, some of the kids coming in and out. And...
All right, we're back. See, last year at this time, I had an office, and that turned into a nursery. And
well,
and I haven't reset up my office in my basement, which is where I was putting everything. And my dog's like, "What are you doing out here? You're gonna let me out now, right?" And I'm like, "So sorry about
golden,
that."
Right?
What's that?
The golden retriever.
Golden retriever. Yes. He's obnoxious. So I'll probably hear him bark in another 5 minutes, and say, "Hey, let me back in." But
what's his name?
Cooper.
Okay. All right.
Cooper.
Cooper's cool. So
Yes.
let's start off with a post that I made yesterday because as a physical therapist staffing company, I do glance ever so often at job postings in my area. And one of the postings I saw that there was a $20,000 signing bonus for an outpatient clinic in my area. Now, I don't live too far from DC. And we do have a lot of PT schools in say the Maryland, DC,
Sure.
Virginia area, that will attract students. And you were actually one of the first persons to respond.
I don't know why, but the picture of Thanos was the first thing that popped in my head, and I'm like, it fit.
It fit. So you are in rural Ohio.
Yes.
Most people would not think of going to a small clinic, especially a small outpatient clinic, unless they are from there. You went back because that's where you were from. The majority of students want to pay off their loans as quickly as possible. So something like a sign-on bonus, especially 20,000, will be very attractive to them. So any words of caution?
I mean,
Any grace for them? The
it's
situation that they're in?
I think that's a tough conversation to have. I've been pretty open, like, about what I make and what I do with my loans. I think I've posted a couple times about it. I don't shy away from having those conversations. I'm the first person to admit that I am paid probably in the bottom 25% of PTs nationally. If you look at the surveys and stuff on Indeed and stuff like that. My yearly salary is just under 80K. I started about 72 or 73, excuse me, as a new grad. People hear those numbers, and I've put those out there, and I've been absolutely blasted online for those. I've been made fun of for, taking, pay that's not worthy of what you do and stuff like that. I strongly disagree with them. Would everybody love to get paid more? Yeah, absolutely. But that in mind, where I live, the cost of living is low. I had close to $85,000. My wife had about $80,000 in student loan debt. We both worked at the same company. We're both making about the same. I bought a house with 5 acres, and I paid about $155 for that. So within 3 years, my wife had her loans paid off, and within 6 of graduating, I had mine paid off. There were a lot of different things that, we did differently. We didn't take a lot of vacations. There's a lot that we need. We weren't living paycheck to paycheck. We weren't living uncomfortably, but we were able to do that. And one of the big trade-offs that I always look at in terms of what I do is I treat pretty much one-on-one. I don't have productivity standards. I swear by that. We take pretty much every insurance. We take Medicaid. We take, the care sources, the Molinas, the Affordable Care Act plans that pay $55-$60 at the company that I work for. And I'm just a staff PT there. I'm not a manager. I've been there for 8 years, but I'm able to treat at the top of my license. I can do what I want or what I deem is necessary. I don't have to have patients come in 3 times a week. Some are 1, some are 2, some that want to come 3 do. I almost never push for that, but I realize that by accepting that position, I'm making a trade-off on what my maximum reimbursement or payment is going to be at this current time. And I'm very much okay with that. But I've also made the decisions, with my wife and my family included, on how we elected to go about things that put me in a position where I'm never going to be rich, but I'm never going to be uncomfortable as long as things are done well. If I had to ever get to that point, there are other options within the field that I could chase. So, when I hear those type of things, it's like, be careful what you're getting yourself into. That initial, bump in money, which could be a lot and could go a long way, is valuable. But like, what is your long-term goal? And, there's a lot of things to consider in that, in what direction you want to take your life professionally, from a financial standpoint. And, I don't think a lot of people have sort of that long-term vision. They see a lump sum dollar and that's what they want. So I get it. It's having that type of debt is very terrifying, but having the degree and the position, the education that a lot of us have sets us up to know how to combat that a little bit.
I think a lot of people want to be able to still enjoy life, but they don't know the steps. You could tell someone, do a snowball debt, or save this, or spend less than you earn and you'll be able to accumulate and get stuff. But there's some people who have to have that step-by-step method in order to follow it. And a lot of us as therapists who have sort of succeeded with stuff, we don't actually give them that material. So you just wrote a book with another therapist.
Yes.
Would this be something that you could write? Because there are PTs who are out there giving students and other physical therapists financial advice. I'm not going to call any names. And sometimes a lot of them can be very arbitrary. So would you at some point write a book, or even if it's an ebook, about the step-by-step process of paying off a student loan in 6 years? Your wife also being a physical therapist, her paying it off in 3 years and able to purchase a home and live within your means. Because there's some person who could benefit from that.
That's a great question. I don't think I would. And a big reason to that would be is that, my situation is not equivalent to anybody else. It's not equivalent to yours, not equivalent to, Alex. I wouldn't want to portray like what my lifestyle is onto to other people. I've got I don't buy new vehicles. I don't have to have the nice stuff. I live comfortably. I do. I really do. But I also, I don't need to live in a city where, with my salary, I couldn't live in Washington, D.C. I couldn't live in Orlando, at the level that I do in Jefferson, Ohio. I strongly encourage people to come to communities like this because there is a need and you can find good positions. And, you could do that if that's what you want. But like, again, we talk about like what you're seeking out of life. And if your values don't align with that, like you're not going to do well and you're going to be miserable for 5 years. Okay. You're going to burn out because you're trying to be more financially stable in somewhere you love, or you're going to be more burnt out because you're financially stable in an area you don't.
I'm not sure what happened to Mo there, but
that's all right. Well, she's coming back. I'm going to let the dog in the last time. Sorry.
There you go.
There we go.
I think that was StreamYard.
And there's Mo's
We're back.
Huh?
But you disappeared, and I had to let the dog back in because he was being obnoxious again. But anyways, yeah. So going back to that, like, that's really hard for me to prioritize somebody else's life. You know what I mean?
I think the biggest thing is there comes a certain level of maturity that comes with making these decisions, right? I find that probably within the last couple years, obviously more so as I've had my boys, your priorities in life change, right? So I think if we all go back for the most part to when we were, mid-20s coming out of PT school, like what we envisioned, I would say, at least for me, is a little different than what I'm living now and what's important to me now, right? So it's real easy to get caught up in this, oh my gosh, look at all this money that I'm making. And you're thinking about all the different ways that you can spend that money, right? Because what we value at that time is a little bit different. What I value right now is, man, I would wholeheartedly come be your neighbor, Nick, because like
he's tired of the Gators, man. He's tired of the Gators.
It's just what you value now. Like what I value now, man, there's a lot more peace that I value now, right?
That's a really good way to put it.
I don't need all these fancy toys. Like you mentioned buying new vehicles. Like I've made so many car mistakes, man, that I hope now that I've learned my lesson. I feel like I have. I've done it. I've made the same mistake enough times to say, like, what are you doing? Right? But it's that young, we come into money, right? Like most of us that come get
you
started.
Spent so many years waiting for that first paycheck. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can afford this.
Yes. And sometimes you lie to yourself because you can't
afford it. You know what I mean?
But you're like, no, I want this.
Yes.
This is what I've been waiting for. Like, I wanted this the whole time, right? When I was 18, 19, this is what I looked forward to doing. And then you get it and you're like, well, shit, like it's cool, but what now? Right.
Mhm.
So I think that to your point of writing a book, like I don't think you're ever going to get to that. When you're writing a book and the person you're trying to target, they're not that, in my opinion, not that new grad, not that young professional, because I think every young professional wants to taste what they've worked so hard for.
Yeah. And, you made a good point. We've all made financial mistakes. I mean, all right. My first year of PT school, I was in 11 weddings, or attended or in. I totaled up the math one day in the clinic between travel and everything. And this is my first year practicing. I was, I was dating my wife, but I was single, and this is my first year with a big boy paycheck. I spent over like $10,000 that year in travel, lodging, everything. I was in like 5. Okay.
Wait, wasn't there a movie about 11 dresses or something like that?
Right. I didn't even know I had that many friends, but I look back and every one of those memories was like, it's a core memory. I enjoyed every single wedding I was in. There's no way I would change what I did. $10,000 principal, take half of that onto my loans, would have been something like $7,000 in interest or something over the course of their loan. You know what I mean? Like, is it a mistake? I don't know, but like you said, there's different priorities, and I could have been done sooner, but I wasn't. And you have to find that right balance, I think, is the key. And now I have a truck that's got 140,000 miles. It's rusting around the wheel wells, and I'm like, it's a good truck. It drives fine. It gets me to work. So life is weird like that, and I think it's just so important when you talk about the financial implications of where you work and what you do, and prioritizing where you're at your point in life. And I get it. I don't think you can fault anybody for making those decisions. And no. I think that's where a lot of people get very defensive, because like when you're saying you don't necessarily need these things, like, yes, you don't need them, but in that moment they did. We're not passing judgment on somebody for making that decision for what was important for them at that person time. It's just like when we're treating patients. I might not be the right PT for that patient at that point in time, but maybe later I'm going to be. Those type of conversations I think need to be had a little bit more nuanced. I get it what it's like when you're 24 years old and you're finally having money for the first time after scraping by for 7-8 years in school and not having money to go on vacation or do the fun things, especially when you have friends who graduated and went into the trades and are making $60, $70, $80,000 when they're 22 years old and they're buying all these new toys, cars, side by side, whatever it may be. So, I certainly can't fault people for that either.
And on the flip side of that post, Mo, like I now, again, what I would say a seasoned vet in this game, I have some questions. If somebody's offering me 20 grand to come work for them, what am I giving them? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, what am I giving them? Because it's not like, oh, Alex, you just got a nice smile. Like, you want to come work for me? Like, let me give you 20K, right? Like, there's absolutely strings attached to that. And I can't imagine many outpatient clinics in today's physical therapy world that have 20 grand liquid, right? So you're not getting the 20 grand all at once. You're probably getting 4 or 5 a year, and they're going to spread it out over 4 or 5 years or however they design it, right? So it's all these things that you have to think about. But again, all you see is 20K. You're like, what? 20K? Done.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, right? For some people, that pays off a car. That pays off, years worth of living, whatever. It's a significant amount of money. We're not talking about chump change. But to all of our younger, newer professionals who are watching, like, ask yourself, what am I giving in exchange for this? Because you're absolutely giving something, and you need to make the decision is if what you're giving is truly worth the 20K that you're going to get and everything that comes with it.
So Josh Funk mentioned that it could mean a 3-year commitment. So probably that's about $5,000 spread out over the 3 years. But what sort of questions would you encourage a new grad to ask if they're interested in a job like that?
I mean, in that situation, I have to ask about productivity standards. I mean, what are you asking me to do? And on top of that, knowing what you're allowed to do. And this kind of goes back to like one of the reasons that the book that Penny and I wrote. A lot of clinicians don't understand that your license is tied to what you bill. And I was having a conversation with my boss today. He had talked to a friend of his who works for a very big box, and I won't name any names or whatever company. And he's like, they want us to double book, Medicare and charge full. And the thing is that big company who's got stakeholders and money, they don't care. They'll pay the fine if they get audited. But you know what happens? You lose your license. You need to be aware of that, and you need to know what power that your license holds. And that goes for any profession. And, I mean, I'm literally 30 miles down the road from Hurdle and Brown, which is one of the biggest Medicare, outpatient frauds in the last, 20 years. There are like 18 clinicians, PTs and PTAs who are all losing their license. Yeah, they've got to pay all of that back. They're going to they'll never practice again. They're going to face all of these disciplinary things. The company itself, the company is going to pay the fine. It may eventually, reopen or continue on, but every one of those clinicians who, whether they knowingly or unknowingly were billing fraudulently, that's on them, and, that would be the number one thing I would ask, because like Alex just said, 20K, profit margins for 20K sitting around are not there in ethically ran physical therapy outpatient settings. Like, it's not. It doesn't mean it won't be over time, but it's not like that's just something is amiss there.
Yeah. I
So
think
ask about productivity. What else would you ask about?
And just culture in general. Like, why haven't they been able to fill that? And it's not always, it's a bad culture of a company. Our company had a position open for months, and I think we are in terms of how we practice, a top 1% in the country. Especially given the nightmares I hear. But nobody want to come here. All right, fair. It's very hard to find any type of PT that wants to come out into this area. That's fine. And again, part of that goes back to what we talked about like, they don't understand, like, that salary is very livable out here. The average income in the county is $25,000. So, you're going to be okay. But, you want to find out on out what the culture is. Are these people that you want to work for? Are they people that are going to provide you mentorship, especially if you're a new grad? Getting thrown to the wolves is very, very difficult. I was fortunate that, where I got hired, I was a student for 15 weeks leading up to it. And then I had a 3-month transition where I worked as an athletic trainer because I still have my athletic training license. But so I was able to kind of continue to meld myself in. I was with them for over 6 months before I was even practicing as a PT. But, finding whether there's that mentorship or somebody that you can learn from. If you're just walking in and all of a sudden you got 6 evals day one, it's like, figure it out. That probably speaks volumes, even though that's a singular instance. That probably speaks volumes about the type of culture that company perpetuates. So I think that those are your two big, red flag things that you want to look at and address before you would consider taking an offer like that.
I would add to that what your exit strategy is, right? So let's just say everything on the surface looks okay. Like, yeah, I want to do this for 20K. You get into it and you're like, man, this is not it. This is just not the right fit for me. What's my cost? What am I in for? What do I owe you if I want to leave, right? Because there's a good possibility you got to pay some of that money back, or that there's some sort of penalty, right? Potentially. Mm-hmm. So I would want to know what happens if I want to get out, right? You're promising me this money. What if I don't like it? What if I want to leave? What do I have to pay you money? Do I have to give you X amount of time before you let me free and clear? I think that would be and also we talk about it with business owners, having an exit strategy. When are you ready to step away? It's no different here. Because again, you're not just taking a regular job where they're going to give you a paycheck for work that you've done, right? They're trying to entice you to come work for them for whatever reason, with this money up front. So I'd be curious to know what requirements I have if I do decide that this isn't what I want to do.
Definitely.
So do you think we, as, what would I say, more senior therapists, have an obligation to report the unethical practices in practice? I know I just left and decided to do my own thing, and that's probably the path that a lot of therapists who have their own business and doing one-on-one care did. But yet the big bucks companies still continue to thrive, buying up all these smaller practices. So are we doing ourselves an injustice by letting the cycle continue?
I think we are. I mean, it's very tough because in order to, identify that, you have to have a very good understanding of how, the billing system works in terms of, just because something's legal doesn't make it ethical. You can do a lot of unethical shit that's still technically legal.
Mm-hmm.
You can put 4 Anthem patients together, have them treated by an aide, talk to each one for 5 minutes and bill them all for a, full hour session, and then have like a PTA over here treating a Medicare patient, and you got 2 clinicians billing out 20 units. Ethical? No.
Mm-hmm.
Legal? Given your contract? Yeah, probably. Doesn't make it right. You're starting to, really, really sort of blur those lines. Now you go somewhere and you're treating 3 Medicare patients at the same time, and your management says you need to bill all 3 of them, or, for one-on-one care, then that's illegal. So, but you have to have enough, evidence to really bring that forward and, go through that process, because that takes a long time. But if you do, whistleblowers get like 15% back to 30% back. The people who like blew the whistle.
What? I kind of wish I knew that early.
Yeah. Hurdle and Brown right up here was like a $14.7 million thing or something like that. The whistleblower got somewhere in the ballpark of, I think, like 2.7 million. Like, you can look it up. I don't know exactly what the number is, but like they got a lot of money. Like, they're getting a lot of money.
Wow.
Yeah. So, to me, yeah, absolutely. It should be honest, but everybody's so comfortable just accepting the status quo. And like, they're like, I'm just going to leave. And, it is a lot of headache to bring about something like that. And, the PT world is a small world, like, and just like anything, you become that person. Oh, you're, you get a reputation or something like that. It's going to be hard for you to find work, at times, especially locally. You be that person, because, if we're being honest, everybody looks one way or the other when it comes to certain, nuances in a plan of care. Like, all right, like, I'm going to hold you over for like 3 minutes. I'm going to do a little bit of dry needling with you. I know I'm not going to get paid by the insurance company. I'm going to bill it. We're not going to get paid, but, I'm going to do that because that helps you, So, there are little things here or there, or I might have missed that research by 1 day. I'm going to go back and do it now because I just missed it by 1 day. Some things like that happen in the plan of care, as long as you're, making an effort, but to make sure that you're going back and correcting those errors. But I think sometimes every now and then things get missed. It's human nature. As critical as I am on it, I can't sit here and say I've never made a billing error. And I don't think there's a single therapist practicing who could say that, because we all miss things at some point, or, there's so much, open to interpretation that we all make that mistake. But, you have to call out the blatantly unethical practices. And at some point we have to step up and say, hey, this is our license. This is me making this decision. And I'm not going to do what you want me to do just because it's going to make you more money.
Do you think also, as therapists, we ought to put ourselves in a position to understand the business side of it, the billing, how units are billed, understand how we reimburse, so that the gap could be closed between employer and staff therapists, because you have people coming out of school expecting a certain salary, but if insurance cuts keep happening, and again, the return on investment is not as high,
Absolutely.
we're gonna be stuck at some point with a lot of therapists with degrees, but no work.
Yeah. Well, you guys are both home health, so you guys have seen the reduction this past year. And, I started practicing in 2015 and Medicare payment is down from where it was at that point. Okay. I have to understand this. And from a business perspective, I understand that if I'm getting paid less now than what I was 8 years ago and inflation is still rising, it is very difficult for me to ask for more money. Like, there's a logistic there that you can't argue. Regardless of what you think your value is, I don't care what you think your value is. You don't have the ability to dictate necessarily what we're getting reimbursed unless we collectively improve, the way that we deliver care. Reimbursement's an easy thing for me to complain about in terms of, being at an outpatient level because I'm in private practice. The same exact treatment I provide across the street will reimburse about 250% more than what I get. It could be me across the street working for the Cleveland Clinic YMCA branch, and they'll get, instead of $80 per session, they'll get $175. And that's not an exaggeration. I literally have copies of those bills. So it's not always reimbursement. It's just a matter of we have not leveraged our power appropriately. And we have to start doing it at the individual level, because I don't think you're ever going to see a mass change unless enough individuals are actually doing it. And most individuals don't really understand that. And, it goes back to, again, one of the reasons I wrote the book that I did with Penny was I wanted to do something, because I complain about this stuff a lot, but I want to do something concrete. Like, all right, I'm not just being performant. I'm not just getting online and bitching. I'm not just like sending out a series of tweet numbers like, oh yeah, that sounds good. No, that's not the point. And that's not me doing what I think is most appropriate. Like, every student I have needs to understand this. This is how you determine your worth. I'm sorry, but if you want to treat every patient, and I think you see it online, these new grads will come out and they'll be like, I'm going to treat all the underserved populations. I'm going to take Medicaid. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make $150,000 a year. No, you're not. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying that in the current system that we have, that is not feasible. It doesn't mean we don't have room for improvement. It doesn't mean we can't get to that point, but that is not feasible in our current system. Illinois reimburses $19 for Medicare or Medicaid, excuse me. Like, it's like $9 a unit, and they only accept TE 97110. This stuff is all like, you can find this stuff online. Medicare and Medicaid. You want to know how much you get reimbursed? Google it. It is all online. It is public knowledge. Like, you want to know how much your Medicaid patient's paying, and you want to know how much your Medicare patient's paying? Those fee schedules are published. Likewise, you can use that and take it and go talk to your higher ups about where you should be from a reimbursement standpoint. You work for a hospital system. There's no reason you should be making less money than me.
And that's a good point, because I was going to bring that up. I mean, a lot of times you might hear people say, well, I don't have any interest in owning my own business or my own practice, so I don't really need to learn the business. I'm like, no, learning the business is how you're going to get paid more, because math is math. There is no way that you can change that, right? So if you know what you're generating for your employer, because you understand the billing, you understand the business, then you have the concrete data, assuming that they share it with you, or you have a way of retrieving this information, because not everybody's just going to give it to you.
Right.
You have the way to say, well, listen, I billed X amount of dollars in this time frame. I make X amount of dollars. That gap is a little wide. Mm-hmm. So how can we go about making it a little bit smaller, right? That's concrete data that you can use to help, as opposed to just saying, well, I'm a DPT. I live in Tampa, and I should make this. Like, you don't have any objective data. The data is there if you understand it and know how.
You know that they don't care about that. They're gonna Google on Indeed and check the salary range for therapists. It doesn't matter if they're a new grad or whatever. All they're seeing is that the range is therapists between 85 and 100, and they're gonna think, look, I know who I am. I want 100 because this is how I want to live.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, this is, the great country of the United States of America. We got the freedom to ask for whatever it is that we want. Now, as a business owner, we're all going to make decisions as to what fits best for our business, right? But I'm more likely to sit down and actually have a conversation with somebody who's talking to me with objective information, as opposed to somebody who is just, making up stuff. Like, I had the opportunity, one of my first jobs, we would actually get a report of what we generated in that previous year, right? So we would get this report, and I would sit down with our clinic manager and I'd be like, hey, this is what I did last year. This is what I'm getting paid. And these are my benefits, because we have to take that into account.
Yes.
It's not just what my check says, right? It's
insurance, overhead, PTO, everything.
It's my check, my health insurance, my PTO, and all these other things that I get, which a lot of times, depending on your situation, is a little bit more valuable, or can be more valuable than if it were in your check, right? Depending on your financial situation, depending on how disciplined you are, and all that stuff. But I had the opportunity to kind of talk this with my manager, and eventually we just got to a point where I was like, you know what, this isn't the right fit for me, not because of the job, the environment, or anything. It was just a pure financial decision. But I had the information, I understood the information to make the decision. It's like, okay, I need to go elsewhere, right? So I think learning the business for anybody, whether you want to be a business owner or not, it is very, very important.
So another thing that I've noticed too, therapists who've been practicing for a certain amount of years, at this point should understand that reimbursement rates are decreasing. However, they want to be compensated for the years that they've been practicing. Now, some may have done stuff to improve their skills, but as an outpatient practice owner or manager, I mean, you can't just go around saying, I'm going to give you this because you've been practicing for 10 years, 15 years, stuff like it. It doesn't make sense. So how can an owner reason with someone like that? Because again, if I look at it, if you're contributing to marketing the business, yes, I could give you an added perk. But a lot of therapists just want to come and work. They don't want to contribute to the marketing, the sales, or getting clinic exposure.
I think that's a really great point. It's something I think about a lot. Like I said, I'm just a staff PT. I don't really have any say in a lot of this stuff. Now, we're a small company. Me and my boss are the only two full-time PTs. We've got 4 full-time PTAs. My wife is part-time PT, and we have another older PT who's sort of pseudo-retired. But I want.
How many clinics do you guys have?
We have 2, and we are eventually going to be opening a 3rd here, in November.
Okay.
We're kind of in a little bit of a transition because we just moved from one clinic to another and whatever. But I have these conversations with my boss, and I think he sees that I really try to promote the company as well. I do our Facebook page a lot and things like that, and I really try to build strong connections within the community. To get people to come in, and people come in a lot. We get a lot of direct access evals, and my putting myself out there as a PT, just as a staff PT, like I want people to come see me. I want people to trust me. I want people to think that, I'm at least relatively okay at what I do. And I want my reflection to be a positive reflection on the company that I'm working for. Because if I'm bringing in people, if I keep my schedule full, I want my schedule full a week in advance. I don't want somebody to be able to call on Wednesday and be able to get in to see me on Friday. I want, and as much as I want to squeeze somebody in, but like I want to keep my schedule full because I want to show that there's value there and that I'm doing my best to bring money into the company as well. And I think maybe you, Mo, as a business owner with staff and stuff like that, would probably have would hopefully appreciate that mindset, because I do understand a little bit that like if I'm not seeing patients, all right, today my 4 o'clock eval no showed. I sat there, I did a couple discharges. I'm getting paid for that hour. I didn't bring any money in that hour. You come in and you treat 4 patients a day in an 8-hour day, you're either going to be working less or you're not going to be making as much. And I appreciate that. And, I want fair compensation, absolutely. But, I don't want to be like, lowballed by an employer, but I also understand that. And I hope that like, as an employee, I want to show my employer that I'm also in this in a 2-way street. I think that if you create that open means of communication, you're more likely to have, a positive outcome. And I mean, from your aspect as somebody who employs, obviously, multiple staff, I would hope that, you kind of like, if I told that to you, you'd be reciprocating to me.
Oh, most definitely. I know look, I was a staff therapist once. I was young, and if there was a no-show, I would find something to do. Maybe document a note, maybe watch an episode on what was the big thing then? Netflix or something.
Netflix
you find something to you, be like, it's my time if somebody doesn't show. But you don't think that, what, the owner still has to pay me a salary. There's still overhead costs. There's still administrative costs. You're not thinking like that. But as you get older and you get into the business side of it, you're like, you know what? Every minute, every hour, there is a cost associated with you having a therapist. Now,
Mo's having some technical issues today.
No.
But yeah, I mean, I think that the more you are able to show that you've invested in the company, right, as a staff PT, I think for the most part, most owners are going to be appreciative of it. And hopefully they have the means to reward you in some form or fashion. And again, it doesn't always have to necessarily be in your check, right? Because there's other ways for you to be compensated that doesn't necessarily end up in your pocket. So yeah, I think having that mindset, that attitude of we need to give everything to this company while we're here, because if we're being valued and respected, we're gonna get that back, and more than likely we're gonna get that back, in a much more meaningful way. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like, we have to, obviously it's hard to go away from the pure financial because of student loans, like we've discussed, the increasing cost of living, inflation, and all these things that make it much more difficult for us to just say, hey, you know what, I can take less, or don't worry about it, right? Like, it's not just easy to do that now, but there is other ways that you can put forth the effort into your company, your job, and hopefully be able to kind of get
I think something that's important, like kind of like that like is just coming to me right now, is like, the three of us are talking right now as people who worked for smaller companies or owned, a smaller company. And, that really does affect reimbursement rates, especially when you talk about commercial payers. So, I think it was the other day, like Physiogram reposted something that you had posted, Mo, and it had, I was just glancing through it at lunch today, and it had like 200 comments of like, I think you'd ask why people are leaving the profession, and they're like, we're not respected, we're not this, we're not that, and everybody was just destroying the employers. Now, in some cases, I think that's very fair, like big box and stuff like that, who are making $250 because they've been able to negotiate a better reimbursement package with Anthem because, they have bigger bargaining power than a lot of us smaller companies. I think there's a fair gripe there. And, the hospital systems, there's no reason that PTs in the hospital system right down the road from me should be making, less money than me, period. You miss me with the concept of, you have more resources available. You're at a YMCA. Stop it. You don't have any more resources available than I do at a standalone outpatient clinic. But, that's what happened. And we've allowed that to happen. There's been no pushback in terms of recognizing these real problems by the majority of leadership in the profession or the majority of academia. These things aren't talked about at school. I don't know anybody who's gone through PT school and has had these conversations. And I've taken students and I've talked to people online from all over the country. These conversations are not happening. We've let this happen. And at the end of the day, you want to make more money? Sure, go work for like one of those bigger companies. That's cool. But be armed with the stuff we just talked about. Be armed with how much you're making. When you're getting 230% of what I'm getting for one unit, you should be making a little bit more. Okay, even with increased overhead working through a hospital system, you should be making more. And I think we need to be aware of that. The three of us are talking here is, people who are involved in the smaller the smaller business aspect of things, but most of these younger generation of PTs are ending up in these big conglomerates that are abusing them and really hurting what our viewpoint of the profession is and what it really can be.
For sure.
Yep.
I briefly want to touch on what Raphael, one of our viewers, just mentioned, where he said that the model of paying them for every client that they see would work for everyone. And I've had that conversation with other therapists and stuff like that.
We do that for home health.
Well, that's what I was going to say, right? So
Yeah.
is what I was going to get is because home health is basically a pay per visit model for the most part.
Yeah, because you guys are the G1051 code or whatever, right?
Since the reimbursement cuts, a lot of them are going towards salary, but most were doing per diem, which is per patient visit, depending on the unit.
So I think it works well in the home health environment. I think in the outpatient, it could be tricky, right? Because, for instance, in the home health environment, I don't have to worry about finding the patients, right? Because I contract with agencies or whatever the case may be. They bring the patients to me. I go see them. I take care of the clinical. I get paid. How exactly that would work in outpatient, and Nick, you may have some more insight on this, is, now if each therapist is only getting paid per whatever patient they see, now they have a responsibility and a duty to bring those patients in somehow, right? So
Like a commission
now,
model.
say it again, Mo?
It's like, well, we can't pay them like a commission because that would be unethical. But if you're at a clinic and you love the clinic that you're in and you market, like you have social media presence, you bring people in, yes, talk to the owner. Maybe you guys can negotiate something. But you're contributing to the culture that you're in. If you want to stay busy, put it out there that I want to stay busy. If you think that you're the shit or you're the man or the woman, bring in people. So you just have a house that you're bringing people in.
Yeah, and I think that's important. But I think that's also that's what the cash PT model is. And the cash PT model works really well for some people in certain areas. Both of you, where you guys live, could make a very successful cash PT model. You could find your niche. You could find the right people. You could market to them. It takes one good location and you will be set. I can't do that. I would fill 10 slots a week, maybe cash-based at like $100 a session. It doesn't exist. So what's hard is, you have to rely on people. You have a higher cancellation no-show rate among people who have lower socioeconomic status. That's not a knock. That is the reality of it. You look through the statistics in our area and with our clinic who take all of the different insurances, the highest cancellation no-show rate are people who are on Medicaid or Affordable Care Act plans. Again, that is not necessarily their fault. I'm not placing blame on them. it as a result of the system that we were in, but those are the ones where you typically see the highest cancellation no-show rate. So I can fill up my schedule. I started today with 8 patients. I finished with 6. It's, is that my fault? 2 of them were evals. I don't know why they couldn't make it, but they couldn't. I haven't even had a chance to build like any rapport with them or whatever. Some days I'll come in and I'll treat all 8 patients. And also a lot of times, I'll have patients who try to get in. I'm like, oh, well, you can work with this PTA or something. If I have a cancel, I'll pull one over to my schedule. That's not fair to my PTA if we had that model. But there's a lot of nuances. It's just kind of a little bit challenging when you're in that realm. But for the cash PT model, for the people who fit into that, by all means, I'm not trashing the cash PT model or anything like that, but like that does work very well for them. And there's some people who are very successful with the cash PT model, and I'm pro capitalism in that aspect. You provide a good service and people will pay for your service. Great, do it. Get your bag. I don't care. The way that I like to practice, I'm not going to be in that situation,
Yeah, I think on paper and theoretically, it should work across the board. But I think for some of the reasons that you mentioned, it does become challenging depending on where you're located, who your primary patient population is. Like all those factors do come into it. And quite frankly, there's some therapists that they just want to treat patients and go home. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? So how is the expectation then that particular therapist is just going to make less because they don't want to put in the work to build their caseload? It gets kind of challenging depending on definitely on where you are and some of that stuff. Now, I kind of want to pivot real quick away from the finance stuff. Nick, I think it was within the last couple months, you posted something that kind of made me think, and I was like, you know what, like makes you kind of think of it. You had your first negative experience or your negative review, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think
from a patient?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is on our Google Facebook page. Anybody is more than welcome to go read it. That was generally unkind, but that's okay.
So
it happens.
And that's the thing. Like I think initially is like we all have this idea of, we're just providing the best care. That's just what we do. That is how we operate. We bill, we do everything ethically. We are practicing at the top of our license. But what I tell people all the time is like, we're in the people business. And a lot of what we do is meaningless if you can't make that connection. And sometimes you can do your very best to make that connection and that connection will not be made. Right? Doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah. And this was a great example too. This session went incredibly well. I showed the patient some new exercises. She was taking pictures of like things on her phone that she could buy at home. She called back 20 minutes after she had left. Hey, I wanted to ask about this exercise you gave me. And I said, yeah. And I took time away from the other patient that I was working with to go answer her questions on the phone. When she had called back like a week and a half later, I'd even tried to call. I left a message. Hey, I'd like to talk to you. Never got anything back. The thing that I had told her, I wasn't going to do a treatment that was highly contraindicated for her situation, and tried to explain that it was my license at risk because her surgeon had said that it would be okay. I said, no, I can't do this. I'm not violating any type of, this is all in the review. If anybody wants to read it. But I felt, like it was a really good session. And then that kind of took me by surprise and, it hurt to see, for something like that. And I understand I'm not for everybody. That's cool. I realize it's another learning experience. And, I made it 9 years or 8 years, however long I've been practicing, 9, before having something like that. And that's okay. it was just a really good, learning experience. And I got to reflect on it. And, that post I made was, just kind of my musings. It was a little bit cathartic for me to kind of put it out there. I want people to see that, like, I share a lot of, successes, but I'm very much human, and I'm going to fail more times than I will succeed. And, I go through discharges all the time, and, this patient only came 1 or 2 visits. Okay, what did I do wrong? I think every single therapist has that. And I think sometimes we need to share that there's a little bit of a human, aspect to this. And it was a humbling experience, but a very valuable one too. So that was fun. A month or so, or 2 months ago, or however long it was.
Yeah, and I bring it up specifically for that point, and more so for our new colleagues, or our colleagues that are just getting started. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, right? Like, we all,
even business owners, it happens. It happens.
Yeah, you're going to end up in a situation where you could have done everything right, and it just didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay. It's okay, because, like you mentioned before, like, we're not perfect. We make mistakes across the board. But as long as you're putting forth your best effort, doing everything that is within your control, man, it's just not going to click.
Go look at surgeons. Any surgeon who has reviews online is filled with, they messed up my surgery. I don't believe that we have an epidemic of surgeons who are going in and performing surgery and they're trying to fail and mess up people's lives. Every surgeon you look at on Google has a plethora of bad reviews.
Yeah.
Bigger payday, bigger responsibility, whatever you want to call it. And they have to bear the brunt of that. Like, they're humans too. You think it feels good trying to go home and read that, like, this person thinks you ruined their life? Like, no, like, they're still empathetic. They're still in healthcare. They want to help you. They didn't go in just to do that for fun. But, you go look, and it's an eye-opening experience. And you always have to have the perspective of where you are in life and clinical practice and everything like that. Because, I'll fail as a parent and a spouse and all of that stuff too. And, you have arguments with your kids, and you have arguments with your wife, you have arguments with your friends, and it's no different than the interactions you have with your patients. You take those moments to learn and move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's understanding that we're in a people business, right? We're customer service driven, and you're just interacting with people, and just like you had interactions outside of work where it didn't necessarily go as you would have liked. It's just part of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part of life, and because you do it at work and in a professional setting, doesn't really change that. But again, it's a good reminder to everyone, new, seasoned, that it's just going to happen, because it's part of the job. It's part of the job. But well, as we get close to wrapping up, Nick, obviously always a pleasure to have you on. We'll switch over just to the family life a little bit, because I know the last time we spoke to you, you were just a father of one. Now you are a father of two. So how has that been for you, and what have you learned in the last year of having a second child?
Oh boy, it's great. It's a blessing. It is a learning experience. It is the greatest and the hardest thing that you will ever go through. I go to work for 8 hours a day. I'm like, oh my God, this is so much easier.
It is, man. It is.
I'm like, oh, I only have to take care of one person at a time here. Like, yes, Lexi, my daughter just turned 1 last week. So everything was really good. I think last time, I was like, I should be good for the podcast as long as my wife doesn't go into labor. So it's been almost a year, or a little over. But no, it's been great, and I've been very, very blessed and fortunate to have two healthy kids. I've been seeing a lot of pediatrics in the clinic lately. You know, I had an 18-month-old or 16-month-old the other day, and I had a 12-month-old the last month, and I've got like a couple of 3 and 5 year olds, and I'm like, it makes me paranoid a little bit. Like, I'm like, all right, she was walking. Okay, we need to do this. I'm like, all right, quadruped, get those legs up. But no, it's really been a great experience, and I'm thrilled about it. My wife's been able to basically go down to like PRN, like she works like twice a week, and it's kind of nice to have her at home, be able to, you know, help with raising the kids and you know, doing what she really values, and you know,
it's a blessing, man. It's a blessing to be able to have.
It's a wonderful experience. It really is.
Yeah, it truly is a blessing to be able to have your spouse, you know, be at home with your kids and be the main one leading, you know, that charge. And to your point, man, like, you know, what we do in work is much easier compared to the job that we do at home, because it's a lot of work, man. It's not a work. It's my wife and I watched the show, and the initial quote was, you know, marriage isn't for punks. But I've also put that into parenting is not for punks, because you've got to be strong individuals to be able to do it. But like you said, it is the most rewarding thing that you'll do. And you know, I pray that your kids and family continue to grow and be healthy and all that good stuff, man.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you guys. I've again really enjoyed getting to catch up with you guys again, and I'd love to make it a yearly thing. You know,
we're absolutely doing that.
I always enjoy this.
Yeah, you and Smoke PT promise that you're gonna have a grill off, and I'm gonna be the taster because Alex is gonna compete. So when you guys figure out the location,
we've got to figure that out. I agree.
I don't know. I again, at the stage of life that I'm at, I think I might be willing to travel to Ohio in the summer and hang out, you know.
There you go. There you go. Well,
in some peace and tranquility next to like a lake or something. So
there we go. We've got lots of those around here. They're not big, but they're fine.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we'll definitely have to get together. But thank you again, buddy. Really appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you so much. Again, it's an honor to be included in conversation with both of you guys. So,
pleasure. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for the comments, Raphael. We saw a lot of them, and we need to get you on the podcast. So this is an open pitch and invitation to you. Again, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and also our YouTube channel. Subscribe. We'll look forward to seeing you guys next week. And have a great evening. Happy birthday, Alex.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
I appreciate you.